In the last 180 days, we've generated $1.4 million in total sales with no setters or closers or sales calls or anything like that. And even though obviously sales numbers are all part of the wealth equation, they're only part of it. And lots of coaches think that if they just hit top line revenue numbers, that somehow the wealth will take care of itself. But you probably have generated quite a bit in sales, but don't have as much left in the bank account to show for it as you feel like you should have by this point. Well, in this video, we're going to change that. If you actually apply what I share with you, you're going to be one of the few who actually get wealthy with your online coaching business. And if you don't apply it, you're going to keep grinding on the never-ending revenue-chasing roller coaster and wonder why you're not getting richer. And if you don't know who I am, my name is John Whiting. I've scaled 3 online businesses past 7 figures. I sold one of them in 2019. I've worked with over 1,000 online business owners. And while my overall revenue numbers aren't quite as flex-worthy as some of the clients that I've worked with, I can say firsthand, my net worth number is respectable to even those who have made 3, 4, 5 times as much revenue as I have. And I've worked with some of the biggest names in the industry: Dan Henry, Brandon Carter, Ravi Abuvala, Eli Wild, Justin Saunders. And I work with them inside of my Bulletproof Boardroom, which is a no BS advisory for 6- and 7-figure online coaches who want business that runs itself, peace of mind every day, and wealth growing every single month. And that's my goal for you, is to get you to 50 to 100K a month and take home profit, and then take that profit and turn it into actual wealth in the bank account, so that at some point in the not too distant future, coaching can become optional and you don't become a slave to your business. And if you want more videos to help you scale your online business in a way that doesn't suck, you can check out the rest of the channel. And in the video I'm about to show you, it's actually a segment from a workshop that I did for my Bulletproof Boardroom members about 6 months ago called the Wealthy Coach Workshop. And while I can't share with you the whole thing, I'm giving away more than I'm comfortable giving away on this, because I know just statistically most people won't stick around for all of it, which gives you an advantage. And I'm even going to give you the Wealthy Coach tool that is a plug and play tool to reverse engineer your entire wealth plan. Now, what we're going to cover is the Wealthy Coach business model, the income keys that every coach needs, how to make data-driven decisions, what I call your freedom number, the Wealthy Coach GPS tool that I was just referring to, profit math, targets, timelines, account structure, income allocation structure, how to scale your lifestyle expenses so you can buy cool stuff and do it responsibly, investment structure, risk mitigation, and what I call the automated investment machine. Now, just as a quick disclaimer, I am not a certified financial planner or a professional finance person. So what I'm sharing with you is just what I've done for me and my family that has made me more money and built up my liquid net worth. But this is not financial advice. This is just what I've learned that I'm sharing with you on a free YouTube video. Okay? Just want to make sure that we're on the same page here. Now, before we dive into the nitty-gritty, I just want to share with you the big idea so that you can understand how the nitty-gritty wealth stuff fits into the overall game plan. All right? So we look at everything like a map. And if you've been following or you're a client, this is going to sound familiar, but remember, number of times over equals certainty. So just bear with me here. Remind yourself, repetition is the mother of skill. All right. So first we got to understand very specifically where you are, specifically where you want to go, and then we reverse engineer everything, just like your iPhone map. The little blue line shows up, and then you just follow the blue line. The problem is most coaches don't have any track. They think they have a track, but they don't. If they do have a track and they're not where they want to be, well, that means they're off track. And the first way to get off track is to have something happen in the middle of the road, some sort of a problem, some sort of an upset that makes us go, ah, shit, and get off track. So if you've ever felt like this guy here, stressed out, concerned, stuff like that, we call that being mentally drunk. Now, the second way to get off track is to see a shiny object that's better over there. Wow, look at that. Shortcut. Yay. New idea. We call that being mentally coked up. And so once we have a track, there's 2 ways to get off track. Mentally drunk, mentally coked up. Causes us to make some questionable decisions. And that's why Warren Buffett says if you can't manage your emotions, you can't manage money. And that's why I also wrote this book called The 7-Figure Mind Method. The foreword is by a gentleman you may know by the name of Dan Henry, and there's a process in the back of this book to rewire your mind so that you don't let your mind hijack you and you don't get mentally drunk or mentally coked up, and you can stay the course and make good data-driven decisions. And so the components of this journey, we'll think of it like a road trip. So in any good road trip, we need to establish the destination, which in our case is going to be our lifestyle. How do we want to live? And then how much is that going to cost? And then how much wealth do we need to accumulate? We call that the freedom number. And I'm going to walk you through the entire Wealthy Coach tool that will help you establish what your freedom number is and reverse engineer everything. We also need to have a purpose as to why we want that, not just arbitrarily. So then we need to have a vehicle to get us there. And that vehicle, in your case, is going to be your online coaching business. Then we need to have a GPS, which is your tracking system, so that we can track our progress along the way. Then we have the speed, which is your monthly income. Then we got your fuel efficiency, which is your profit margin and how much effort it takes to actually produce that profit. Then we have the driver, which is you and how you're performing mentally behind the wheel. And finally, AAA, your lifeline. Who are you going to call when things get challenging? Now, what most coaches do is they're reactive drivers. So they have a very vague destination. They want to go someplace better. Their vehicle is broken. They don't have a GPS, or they do and it's wrong, and they're not sure where they are. Their speed is inconsistent. You can see here this little guy bopping around with all of the mental drunkenness and the mental coked upness. So if you've ever felt like this little spinning around yellow triangle guy, this is why. And obviously that's inefficient, and usually that leads to a stressed and distracted driver. And the problem with this industry is most people are hiring gurus, coaches, mentors, whatever you want to call it, that are also in the same boat. And that's why some of the biggest names in the industry come to me. So wealthy coaches, on the other hand, they're intentional. They have a clear and compelling destination. And that's what we're going to engineer with this Wealthy Coach tool, is your freedom targets and the exact numbers. And I'm going to show you how to get a free copy of this in just a little bit so that you can plug in your stuff and know exactly what it's going to take on your journey. Wealthy coaches also have an unbreakable vehicle. It's very important to orient your business in a way that can sustain the journey. And one of the things that I do cover on other videos on the channel is how to reinforce the actual vehicle so that it is sustainable, so you don't grow to hate it. And as part of that, that's creating a situation where instead of chasing prospects, whether it's you or your team, and trying to brute force sell and close and all that stuff, we want to pre-sell everybody with a very specific type of content that gets them warmed up to us, indoctrinated to us, so that by the time they show up in our universe, they're basically ready to buy. And again, I have other videos on the channel about this, but the system that I created called the propaganda machine, and it's a content and ad system that basically pre-sells and warms up prospects so that sales becomes way easier. And if you do this well enough, you can get to the point where you don't need a sales team anymore, in which case it's much more manageable. And that's where I've gotten to at this point, still refining it, not perfect, but getting there. So you can check that out. There's a link in the description. But we also want to have a clear and accurate GPS, and that's why we provide all of our clients with the Teddy tracking system. You can actually get a free clickable demo of this tracking system with a link in the description as well. And the reason this is so important is the only way to make wise decisions is to become data-driven, right? If you think about it, the only alternative is guessing what to do next. And most people are just guessing and feeling and hoping their way forward while convincing themselves that they're not, or they're smarter, or they don't need data, or they're not a numbers person, or something like that. If that sounds familiar, I wish there was an alternative too, but I've learned that there's not, because every successful business makes decisions based on data, not emotion or gut. There's not a single Fortune 500 board meeting that starts with, "Hey Frank, how you feeling about what we should do? You know what? I feel like our ads aren't performing very well. Let's completely shift strategies." They don't do that. There's not a single top business in the world that isn't run by numbers. Your business is no different. And that's what the rest of this video is going to dive deep into. And you're going to see what's actually required. And just as a bit of a side note, I can't tell you how many people have heard this message from me, tried to figure out how they were the exception to the rule for 3, 6 months, a year even. And then finally, after beating their face against the wall, trying to avoid numbers and avoid data, coming back and going, all right, I'm ready to actually implement this because I realize my feelings and my gut are not what's going to get me to where I want to go. I am not the unicorn snowflake exception to the rule. So I'd like to invite you to decide right now that you're going to become data-driven and numbers-driven. There's no such thing as numbers people and non-numbers people. As long as you live on a financial planet and it costs you money to buy stuff and things that you want and experiences that you want, turns out you have no choice but to be a numbers person. Same. So we better just start facing reality, and that's what we're going to do in this video. And that's how we got Justin Saunders from $18K a month to $434K a month, Brandon Carter from $250K a month to $600K a month, my client Roderick from $20K a month to $85K a month, is just by becoming data-driven. And so once we know what we're supposed to do, we just want to do it at a consistent, slowly accelerating speed, because things will die as fast as they grow. And so if you're trying to do moonshot, quantum leap, that's not how road trips happen. You wouldn't trust somebody to take your family on a road trip if they're like, I know going the speed limit's cool, but we're just going to add rocket boosters and see if we can quantum leap the whole way and just fly there and go 1,000 miles an hour. So ask yourself, would you trust your family with somebody who was leading in that fashion on a family road trip? Probably not. So this is an indicator as to why is it that your team or your clients or your family is kind of looking at you out of the side of their eye sometimes, is because something just doesn't feel right. And that's because we're not following the fundamentals of how to get from point A to point B. And so we need high efficiency, and we need the driver to be focused and calm. And we also need their lifeline, their advisor, who they call when things get screwy, to also be aware, alert, and calm. So what I've learned is if you don't have all 7 of these components dialed in, you'll get lost, frustrated, and you'll never actually get to your destination. And that's a shame, because it's not that hard to dial these in. So this video is going to touch on a few of these components. It's going to touch on getting clear on what is the end destination. It's going to touch on the GPS to track our progress along the way. It's going to focus on being as efficient as possible, and it's going to focus on making sure that we're going the right speed. And just to make sure that we're totally on the same page on the business model side, and if you're watching this, you probably already have a decent business model, I'm going to cut to the part of this workshop where I'll just remind you, what does the business model look like, so that we're just talking the same language throughout the rest of this video together. So let me know if you have any questions as we go here in the comments. I'll do my best to personally respond to them. So take some notes. You're going to be glad you did. Execute on what I tell you to do, and I think you'll be really, really glad that you watched this video. All right, let's dive in. So the vehicle, I'm going to just go really fast. As online coaches, we have stuff that we know, and then there's people out there with a problem that the stuff that we know, the skills that we have, can solve. Our job is to put that in one organized, repeatable process, charge anywhere from 3 to 10, even Roderick's core offers like $36,000. That's rare. But we need one offer with one audience to get one solved problem. So this Wealthy Coach Workshop, I have one audience. You guys all have the same problem. I'm going to walk you through an organized, repeatable process. And by the end of that, you're going to be a happy people with a solved problem. Okay, so this basically will get you to at least $1 million a year, if not 2. I've seen people scale this to 10 million a year. So everybody's situation's a little bit different, but don't be adding 17 offers. If you have 17 offers or 3 offers or 2 offers and you're doing less than $1 million a year, you need to stop that bullshit. Okay. All right. This is the big picture. So each one of these stages, this goes kind of left to right of we're attracting with long form and short form content. We're attracting people into either a free. So for example, what we're doing right here is a front end offer for me. It's a $100 offer. It's an organized, repeatable process I'm going to take you through. I got you here from ads, emails, and text messages. And so then some of you will choose to work with us further in Boardroom, and you will go all the way through this process and go through our entire system, which is an organized, repeatable process. And then I don't do a back-end ascension offer anymore, but if you chose to add a third offer, like Justin Saunders, for example, perfect example, He has a low ticket front end offer, he's got a core offer, and he's got a back end offer. And it's very common, but we start here, okay? And so in terms of how we're spending our time, we have the CEO, we're wearing all of these hats to start, and you really want to get it to a place to where all you're doing is your marketing and as little fulfillment as you can possibly have while still having your clients get result, taking them from point A to point B and retaining. And that's really it. Everything else you want to master first and then delegate. So don't try to hire somebody to do your marketing if you suck at marketing. Don't try to hire somebody to do your sales if you suck at sales. Nobody's ever going to sell your offer better than you. And so basically that's the long and the short of it. I'm not going to hammer on that during this, but this is basically like the big idea of this. I know people who run this model that do $40 million a year. So once you've got this to an organized, repeatable process, and everything becomes an organized, repeatable process, then you just run the process. Thumbs up if this makes sense. We're on the same page in terms of what this vehicle looks like. Okay, cool. Then it's a matter of just knowing the numbers and conversion rates from each stage. Reach, landing page views, opt-ins, like all of this is top of funnel. So going back, this is if I flip this funnel on its side, this is just the metrics from one stage to the next. And all we're doing is seeing how much throughput, meaning how many people, for example, that we reach actually view our landing page from our Facebook ads, for example, right? And then how many view the landing page, opt in? How many of those, in this case, do we reach out to in using this example? And then how many of those become a conversation? How many of those book? How many of those actually confirm and say, yep, I'm going to show up? Then how many of those we make an offer to? How many of those make a deposit? How many of those sign up? So then we just track all of that and we're able to see, do we have enough volume and do we have enough efficiency? So all the percentage metrics in your life, conversion rates from one stage to the next, are how efficient are we being? All of the gross bulk metrics are how many of them are happening. And those are really the two types of metrics that we ever track. All right, income keys, real quick. Money comes from people. We know this. You get paid in direct proportion to the value you add to the marketplace, not how valuable you are. Super common thing for coaches. So just remember, if you're valuable in things and stuff, but the people that you can help with those things and stuff aren't seeing it, then you're not adding value to the marketplace. You're just sitting there with unrealized value. All right. The more people that know and trust you, the more people that will buy from you, volume, but they have to be the right people, to be very clear. You need to hold mental real estate for something in people's minds. This is one thing that I have not done very well at, mainly just because we've been so good at so many different things that it's been challenging to narrow it down. And I believe what I'm sharing with you today is what I'm best at, so to speak. And so here we go. You need offers that people want. That's a pretty obvious one, which is why I ask you guys to tell me what it is that you want on surveys. Pretty simple. You need to communicate your offers clearly in their words, right? What words do you put on the surveys? Those are the words I regurgitate to you on sales pages. If you're not doing that, it's going to be really challenging. Got to have social proof. If you've taken people from point A to point B, happy people with a desired outcome, you need to show them. How many of you guys, by show of hands, have been retargeted by my testimonial ads? All right, cool. So I try to show you. I have proof. We need to track your conversions. We need to get ratios of how much of this does it take to get that. So how much in ad spend does it take to get a sale? How many book calls do we need to get a sale, or whatever your conversion mechanism is? Most likely you need to charge more, and you got to get good at sales, as we just talked about. We need hyper specific targets, and this is the system that I was alluding to, this Teddy system that we use to basically diagnose, and it makes it so easy to find opportunity in about 30 seconds. And so anyway, in Boardroom, what I do is basically people have their numbers, bring them to the Monday calls. I look at the numbers, and I don't care what you feel like you should be doing. The numbers say to focus on this, and we help them avoid spending time on the wrong shit, only spend time on the right shit. And Roderick's not here, but we had a conversation on Monday that he really felt strongly that he should do a self-liquidating offer and launch a book funnel and all this stuff. And he has some of the best numbers of any of our clients. And I vehemently, Shannon, you were there, right? I vehemently fucking railed him, nicely, of course. But I'm like, no, just don't do that. Long story short, here's what to do. Here's why. I explained why. The numbers didn't say you're lacking a good traffic source. Your numbers say you need to raise the prices of your product because he has like a 75% close rate on a $36,000 thing. Actually, it's a 40. I'm like, you just need to raise prices and charge more upfront, as he's been collecting like $7,500 up front as the first payment, 75% close rate. I'm like, that's too high. Double it. See what happens. You can always drop back down. Don't build a fucking book funnel. That's stupid. stupid, especially given his technical acumen. He's not like a tech genius, nor does he fucking need to be. His funnel works. Long story short, is 2 days ago, he got a $50,000 paid in full. He just asked for $50,000 up front instead of $7,500. A lot easier than launching a fucking book funnel. So now if he keeps closing 50K PIFs right out of the gate, we're going to have to keep price raising. So when you have accurate data and you know how to read accurate data and make decisions with accurate data, scaling becomes hilariously simple. But this is what a board of advisors really does, is they look at numbers and they make sure they're making objective, smart decisions, not what they feel like they should do. If the data says to do something, yet your gut feeling says to do something else, and you execute on that something else, you're going to spend a lot of time and doing something, and it's not going to be the result that you want because you're going against what the data fucking says to do. That's 99.9% of the time. Very rarely does your gut feeling, when it goes against what the data says to do, actually pan out with better results than if you just done what the data says to do. So the main primary question that we're always asking isn't, what do we feel like we should work on next? It's, what does the data tell us that we should be working on? And it should be only one thing, not 76 things. So if you have a bunch of stuff that you're working on, that tells me that you don't know how to make decisions on what to work on. So I don't know how to make decisions on what to work on either without accurate data. It's like, how do you make decisions on where to turn on your road trip? You look at the fucking GPS and it tells you. I feel like we should go this way. Anybody ever been in a car with an old person and you're driving? And when I say old person, people who don't use GPSs, they like to fucking flex their navigational skills, and you're driving, you're following the GPS, it already calculated the fastest route, you're just following it, and you have a passenger and they're like an old person or an older person, and they're like, no, go this way over here, I promise, go this way. Anybody ever experienced that? And you're like, dude, can I just follow the fucking GPS? And then you go the other way, and there's a reason it took you this way, because it knew that there was an accident or traffic over there, and now you're fucking stuck in traffic. Don't argue with the GPS. You don't need to. It's an unnecessary flex. It really is, especially when it's knowable. It's silly. And that's how 99.9% literally of coaches in this industry, that's how they make decisions. A, they don't want to look at the GPS. B, they trust their gut. And I'm not saying don't trust your gut, but what I am saying is, if you are in your first ever flight instruction flight and you go up with a pilot and you're in the co-pilot seat and you hear a loud thud and the fucking plane goes like this, you're going to be fucking nervous. You're gonna be like, holy shit, we're going down. And then the pilot's just like, no, it's just the landing gear, relax. So your gut in that situation, because you don't have the experience to know, is going to be incorrect. So the idea here is to get your gut to where it matches what the data says to do. And once your gut tells you where you are navigationally, and then you look at the GPS and you actually are there, that is where ultimate confidence comes from. Does that make sense? So it's not, do I trust my gut or not? It's, we need to know what to objectively actually do. And then if our feelings disagree with it, that would be that red thing that takes you off track, right? We got to clear that shit. We have to do objectively what the data says to do. I remember very distinctively one of the first ever jumps up in revenue that Justin Saunders had, like very significant, tripled his business in a month type significant jumps, was because the data said, we need to basically triple your ad spend. You're just not spending enough based on your targets. And he was nervous to do. Same with Roderick, actually. He said, he was spending like $350 a day or something like that. We got to spend a G a day. If you hit the targets you tell me you want to hit. And so we raised it, or he cleared a fear charge using our Bulletproof Mind system to get over the fear of wasting money on ads. And he tripled his ad spend. He tripled his business also. He felt like he had to do some other shit. I'm just like, no, everything's good. Now we just need more volume. Pour it on. The math says pour it on. You'll get the return because historically you have. And so now he's comfortably spends $1,000-$2,000 a day on ads without batting an eye and is comfortable doing what the data says to do. And so we need this for our business. Now, if we're going to navigate somewhere, we got to know where. So the destination, this is what we talked about earlier, how you want to live, what's it going to cost, how much do I need to live that way forever, why am am I doing that? That is everything that makes up the destination. And again, I don't need to go over this, but long story short, if you have $1 million invested, you can safely withdraw 40 grand a year, 4% for the rest of your life without running out of money, because depending on where it is invested, which we'll touch on that on today's call as well, on average, a decently balanced portfolio will grow 8 to 12% per year, and you can safely draw down on that 4%. And it's been like a time-tested investment rule. I'm not saying this is the only investment strategy to follow. Again, I don't know what I'm doing at all when it comes to money, according to my disclaimer, but I can say we need something to aim at, and we need a good reason as to why. We need a good logical starting place. That doesn't mean we can't reroute along the way, but in order for your GPS to actually start navigating somewhere, you got to give it a specific destination. And most people just either pull a number out of their ass and just say, oh, $100 million. And then they're like, 100K a month. It's just at that rate. I should have done a calculation, but it would take multiple lifetimes at 100K a month to accumulate $100 million, depending on a lot of factors. But my point is, people don't know why they say what they say or why they set the targets that they set, and they wonder why they don't hit any targets. Does that make sense to you guys? So this is just the starting point. This is where I start. And once you start on your path down this road and you get to, this is where we started with Justin. He had 25K in the bank. Now he's got well over $1 million in the bank. And it was because we started with this very much larger long-term destination, and that $1 million in the bank is just a checkpoint along the way. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Questions so far? All right. There's a law that states that which is measured improves, that which is measured and reported back improves exponentially. You probably heard me hammer on this. We've got to track. If we're not tracking, we're slacking, according to my client, Brandon Carter. And every successful business makes decisions based on data, not emotion or gut. This is not optional. This isn't, wow, that's an interesting strategy. No, there's not half the Fortune 500 just sits around and goes on ayahuasca journeys and decides stuff. And the other half actually makes decisions based on numbers. Every single public company and every successful company makes decisions based on what the numbers say to do. You need to do the same. There is no point where you're, quote, I've heard this too, I'm not ready for that type of a system. You're going to go on a road trip, like, you better be ready for a GPS. It's not, I'll get halfway there and then buy a GPS. You might not get halfway there without a GPS. So it's really interesting, the beliefs that coaches seem to have. So just so we're all on the same page, if you're going to start a journey, wouldn't you rather just have a GPS? That's my philosophy. Okay, so let's look at this tool. So there's 4 tabs on this. The first tab is the inputs tab. We're going to cover what those inputs are in a second, but this is where we're plugging in our numbers. And to be clear, and while you're doing this, just watch my screen for right now. The white cells are input cells. These yellow cells here are also input cells. We're going to cover what those are exactly in just a second. When we put in that information, we're going to have this page that says Wealth GPS. And what it's going to show us is, to the best of our ability, our current liquid net worth, where we are right now. Okay, so the red, I tried to color coordinate it a little bit. So currently where we are is the liquid net worth. That would be like where we are is in our financial destination. Not how fast you're going, not how much revenue you're making. That's not where you are. Okay, we've come to a stop at an exit. All right, so we're not moving at all right now. Where are we snapshot wise? Where are we on our financial planet? Okay, you guys see the difference between where we are financially and how fast we're going financially, right? So the green is going to be where we want to go. Okay. And there's actually 2, I could have put a blue destination thing, but I'll cover what these are in a second. The green is the freedom number, and then we actually have a progress map. And so this is current age. We're going to plug in on the input side the desired freedom age. At what age do we want to have business be optional and we can still live how we want? And then we have our current liquid net worth on the left and our destination there on the right. And then we have these breakdowns, which we'll cover in just a second. Then we have freedom targets. This is the, quote, roadmap game plan that pretty much is calculated instantly, that will tell us based on where we are and our desired destination, meaning where do we want to go? I want to stop needing to do business at 70. That gives me, and I plugged in some, I'll just say some average numbers for your guys kind in here. Okay, we have desired years until freedom, so this is like our estimated time of arrival, right? And we have what year is, and then we have our profit margin, life margin. I'll cover what these are in detail. I'm just going to start here. And then it basically maps what do we need to do by the hour, day, week, month, quarter, and year based on our numbers. And then there's a really basic, dumb, stupid, simple version of a profit calculator where we just plug in what's our profit goal by how many days from now, and it'll tell us what targets do we need to hit per day, per week, per month, and total towards that goal. All right, so you guys good to go through this real quick? I'm going to see if I can maybe workshop this a bit. This is that workshop part of it. On your own, replace the fields with your own information. So first, just do the birthday one. Step one, make sure you get the year. That's how it calculates your age. So the next piece, I will just say you're going to want to go back and do this very hyper accurately after this. It's going to take too long live for you guys to go fuck around and find your actual real numbers. But we're going to do some estimates. I will say most people severely underestimate what their actual monthly spending is. Of what are your monthly bills from a personal life standpoint. Most people severely underestimate that unless they're tracking it every single day, like me and my clients. So most people give themselves the benefit of the doubt when it comes to doing this without the exact numbers. So I'll just give you that disclaimer. So what we're going to want to do, the big idea here is we're going to take our historical data, ideally from the last 12 months. So that would mean start date from 12 months ago would be 8/27/2024. End date, I guess that would be 8/27/2025. So then what you would do is you would go back, if you use like something to track your finances, or even if you just went through your bank statements or your credit card statements and added all them up based on what your personal spending was, meaning your mortgage, rent, insurance, your cars, your food, stuff like that you use to live, not business expenses, but just like your household expenses, okay? Whatever those living expenses are. Like if you shut down your business, you'd still have to still pay those expenses to live. Those are what we want to put in this box. And so I just put 150 grand. That's obviously 12 grand a month-ish. I'll say that's relatively common for your guys' demographic, but you put in your own number. Again, make it accurate for whatever time period it is. So just so we're very clear on the same page, if you selected, like I'm just going to do the last 30 days as my date range, you're just going to want to make sure you adjust the start date to 30 days ago. Actually, that would be 2024, but you get my point. Adjust the start date accordingly. Otherwise, the whole thing will be screwed up. Okay. If you have passive income from another source, put in the total amount that you've collected in the last 12 months. Okay. Put in how many hours do you work per day. I didn't do how many hours have you worked in the last year. That's tough. But you can put in what's my average actual hours worked per day, like right now. And if you're not sure, just look at yesterday, give it your best guess. During whatever time period you've selected, put in how much, if you have spent anything on ads, put in ad spend. And then instead of giving you what these KPIs, quote, should be, depending on if you're running like a DM model, a whatever the fuck kind of model that you're running, there's three main KPI variables here. And so we just want to label whatever KPI that is. In this case, it's leads. I also put little notes here, tool tips for you, because whatever you type in this box will also populate those KPIs here and on the other sheets as well. So for example, if you do DM ads, right, you would do how many actual new DMs did we get? If you do some sort of outbound cold email, whatever, you'd put that here. How many emails did we send? How many book calls? Whatever. You guys good with that? All right. So do that for like your main KPIs. So for right now, for this, just the sake of this little workshop example, I would just say do your best to estimate, but you're certainly going to want to go back and get the actual real numbers because your guess is going to be wrong, probably pretty severely wrong. So just FYI. And then how many new clients have been closed in that time period? All right. How much cash did we collect in our business? Top line, right? This would where if you use Stripe, you would go open Stripe, select that date range and look at the number and type that in that box. Or you could just look at your bank statement, whatever the hell you use to see how much cash came in. Your QuickBooks, I don't care what you use. We just need a number. Then what was our business expenses during that time period? Again, look at your bank statements, look at your QuickBooks. We want the full number there. So once we have all of those numbers in place, now we have our historical totals for that time period. And this is what we're going to use to project forward, at least with an educated guess. All right. So our past performance doesn't always indicate future performance, but every time that I've done this with a client, it turns out when we do the calculation, their numbers are just fine in terms of efficiency. Their volume and expectation calculations on what are the daily targets and weekly targets that are needed to hit the monthly, quarterly, and yearly are just nowhere near what's required. So you guys have heard people like Hormozy talk about you just need to do so much more volume than you think you need to do. Anybody ever hear him or somebody else talk about the amount of volume that's required? People severely underestimate the volume that's required. That's because most people don't calculate the volume, or they just arbitrarily go, I'm going to do 100 a day or 1,000 a day of a thing, and then they don't have a real reason as to how it fits into the big picture. And so when you don't see the progress on a GPS, or you don't see the map, you don't see how it relates to the big picture, it's really easy. How many of you guys have ever done a big flurry of activity and then you stopped? The reason is because you didn't have the accurate math to be able to stick with it long enough to know that your inputs mathematically have a really high statistical probability of leading to the outputs that you want, meaning the profit, the closed clients, the deals, right? So we need very specific targets to hit. We can't just be like more. More is really fucking demoralizing to shoot for, because how much more? I'm exhausted now. I don't see how this is going to pay off. That's what our brains say. And so for the most part, most likely what you're going to find out in doing this process is most people don't have sufficient inputs for the outputs that they desire. So what you're going to find is you're just not doing enough. But now we know exactly how much of something to do based on our own numbers, not somebody else's numbers. That's what very key here is, because you can, how many of you guys have ever based your decisions on what somebody else said, like you should do in terms of your numbers of effort of whatever, and you're just like, okay, I'll do that. Anybody ever just take their word for it, a thing, right? The problem is because it's just this detached number over here, and the only reason that you'd stick with that is because they said so, and that's not a very compelling reason for most people to stick with something. So we need a good, logical, real reason to stick with something, okay? All right, so I've beat that to death enough. The next thing that we're going to want to do is put in our effective tax rate, depending on where you are in the world. This is going to affect everything, right? Because if you're in California, it's going to be like 50%. If you're in Florida, it's going to be closer to 25 or 30. If you're in Europe, whatever, just put in your tax rate. All right, because remember, the way that we build our liquidity up is we got to have more money left over at the end of each month, and we invest that money. That's how you get rich, is you spend less than you earn and you invest the difference. But we got to calculate that, which is what this tool is designed to do. And that means after tax, after we've paid taxes, what do we have left over? Anybody ever get caught with a surprise tax bill? Show of hands. Yeah, people forget to factor in that little 30% number or whatever it is. Then they get fucked. So we don't want that. We got to calculate, how do we hit our goals, our liquidity goals, and still pay the legally required amount in taxes, which, quick little anecdote, the amount of time that you're going to waste going off on tax saving journeys, everybody that I know that's like a rich, like richer than me, is it's just not fucking worth it. Just make more money in your business and pay the taxes. Everybody that I know, no, like including billionaires that I know, it's not worth the distraction. That would be one of those getting pulled off into right field there with that would be one of those green things that will pull you off track, and you'll do a whole lot of effort and energy to save $100,000 in taxes when you could have just been here and made $100,000 or $200,000 more in your business. It's like hilariously common, and no matter how many times or anyone says that, people still have to find out for themselves. Go for it. I know everybody starts to black out when we talk about numbers, but this is one of those things where the title of this YouTube video would be, it's boring, but it'll make you rich. So everybody pay the fuck attention. This is what the rich people do that the poor people don't, because it's boring and they're not numbers people. Anybody not have to pay money for the shit that they want to do in this life? I do. Cool. That costs, that's measured in numbers. So if we're in business and we got to pay money for stuff, whether you like it or not, you're now a numbers person. You always have been. You've just been not identifying as a numbers person. Just because somebody identifies as a female, but they have a dick, does not make them a female, to be clear. All right. Didn't lose any. Nobody signed off just yet after that one, so we're good. All right. We want our current snapshot. So this would be where we just look at our bank accounts, our investment accounts, and we look at how much cash do I have, right? That's pretty straightforward. Add it up, put in that box. How much credit card debt do I have? Add it up, put in that box. How much do I have invested? I don't care if it's in index funds, if it's in crypto, it's something liquid investments, not I own a house or I have an investment property. That's not what goes here. We're talking about total liquid investments, meaning I could press a button right now, turn it into cash in a day or less. That's liquid. So that's what we want to put in this total invested box. Everybody good on that? Awesome. And then this is the one that's going to take you a minute, probably. Monthly cost of ideal lifestyle. So in this little last section here, stuff that we want to do, how we want to live, how much that going to cost. We got to know that number. So if right now our monthly cost of lifestyle is 12 grand or whatever, and we want 2 houses, 6 cars, and we want monkeys to be able to live in a zoo in the backyard, we got to understand how much do these monkeys cost? What is their food cost? We need to understand, do we need to hire a zookeeper? Where do we find a good zookeeper? How much do I need to pay a zookeeper? Are they going to live on site? Do I need to rent them a place? Do I need to fly them in from South Africa? We need to price all of that out. And then we might decide that we actually don't want monkeys in the backyard and we're cool just visiting the zoo once a week. This is lifestyle design, and you gotta know what the fuck it costs. When we bought this house, when I did this office, when we had our son, when we buy a car, when we do fucking anything, we price it out and see where does it fit within our GPS system. If you're not doing that, then you're just putting it on a card and crossing your fingers and you'll say, I'll figure it out later. Anybody ever do things like that? Yeah, you're fucked doing it that way. So don't do that. Let's reverse engineer. And so it's pretty straightforward. I'll give you an example of when I bought my Audi R8. It's $142,000. I put $45,000 down, and the payment's like $1,200 a month. And my insurance is like $300 a month. So before I even looked at what price, oh, nice, Anthony. Yeah, before I even put like what my goal car was, I had to understand the rules and what I'm really in for and what's the cost of maintenance. So for example, I had a Ferrari before that, much higher, much more expensive when it comes to maintenance. And it's like that factors in. It's not just like the monthly payment. And so we don't have time to get into all the lifestyle strategy. I'll share with you after this, we go through this tool, a few things on that, and happy to answer whatever questions. But I knew that I needed $45,000 to put down, right? And it had to fit within my grand life scheme, along with all of the other stuff that we were doing in life at the time. Does that fit? Does it make sense? Is it responsible? Or am I YOLOing? Am I blowing all my money on a fucking whip? Stupid. All right, ideal savings rate. This is you make profit in your business as your income. And to be clear, a coaching business, it's a lifestyle business by definition. We're here to help people get a result and get paid handsomely to do it. To be clear, my philosophy and strategy is I'm not building this thing to exit it, take it public, go faceless. I'm getting paid to help people in a leveraged fashion, in a very lean fashion, and get paid what I want to live the life that I want today and perpetually into the future. And for most people, that number is a lot smaller than they think it is. For example, for me, I really don't need any more than 150 grand a month take home to live really well and set aside at least 50% of that, investing 75 grand every month. I'd rather make $150,000 a month profit on 180,000 top line than $1 million top line with a team of 50 fucking people that I have to beat my face against the wall and manage them and all this stuff. So I'm building for efficiency, lean, and just that fits into this strategy as well. Okay. So having had the 400,000 a month team of 23, everybody that I know who has a company like that behind the scenes wants to fucking kill somebody. Okay. Been there. So it's not that we just want to be as lean as possible, and just understand the goal of this is not some huge windfall. The goal of this is to make as much profit as possible, invest those profits wisely, have that grow, do that for as long as we want to, and then we do it until it becomes optional. Then we do it because we want to do it, or we don't want to do it anymore, and we can still live the same way. Okay. So as a general rule, we want to live on half of what we make in profit. So if just simple terms, if my take home profit is $100,000 a month after tax, I can responsibly live on 50 and invest 50 every single month, and we Gucci. Okay. Good starting point. Ideal savings rate should be at least 10%, like bare minimum, basics of like finances, but 50 is the target. And then put desired freedom age. What age do you want to be like, I've had enough, I just want to ball out and not fucking coach anymore? That's the age that you want to put in there. Okay. So again, go back after this and refine these, but I'm going to walk you through the numbers that I put in there are average for this demographic of somebody making, what did I put in there? 510,000 a year. So that's 42,000 and some change a month. I just took your averages from your surveys ish. In general, the profit margin of you guys for the most part. Again, it varies widely, so, use your own numbers. But profit margin is basically your business's fuel efficiency. So 31% is average, and the life margin, this is where it gets interesting. This is like our life fuel efficiency. Most people are like break even or even losing money per month. And so we have our monthly surplus/deficit average based on the inputs from the inputs page. This is like how much fuel have we gained or lost each month. All right, you guys good with those numbers? Thumbs up if that makes sense. Cool. Then we have our ideal freedom number. So if I want to live on $50,000 a month and invest 50% of that to draw down 4% per year, I need a portfolio size of $15 million to live on $50,000 a month into perpetuity, even if my coaching business shits the bed. So it'll spit out your ideal freedom number. Now, you'll notice that if I'm losing money each month, and in fact, maybe I'll make this to where it's like really close. So in this case, if I reduced that last 12 months lifestyle cost, now I have a monthly surplus of $986. I'm saving 11% of what I earn, and my business profit margin still remained the same because I adjusted the personal expenses. You guys see how I did that? So based on these numbers, making $510,000, so we're mid six-figure coaching company. We're taking home $260 a year, right? Sounds cool. Is that what I didn't put that here because it's really unnecessary. Actually, you know what? I have that here down here. Net profit per year. There we go. After tax. So that would be, if I make 510, business expenses are 350, my gross profit's 160. So it's okay, cool. I make six figures. Great. I owe 48,000 of that in tax, and now I'm taking home 112. And if my expenses are 100, I'm left at the end of the year with a $12,000 surplus. Does that make sense? And here's the breakdown by quarter, month, week, day, hour. Okay. Going back up here. So if I just keep doing what I'm doing, my age at freedom at this $15 million number, I will be 90. So I have to do that for another 54 years. And my estimated date of freedom, my estimated time of arrival is 2079. And so that's where we see this progress is if we're 36 and we want to be free at 70, we basically want these yellow bars to all match each other. And so if your yellow bars don't match, we got some makeup work to do. That's okay. But this is like the real simple version of wherever this map GPS is. We got the green, we got the red, we got our progress. So as a basic general rule, to be clear, before you start investing anything, you need to have at least 3 months of cash in the bank. And so this little liquidity breakdown will tell you how much cash on hand do we have. So 3 months cash target, 6 months cash target, 12 months cash target. And this will tell us, all right, if I have $80,000 cash on hand, that means I'm $55,000 above my 3-month cash target. I'm $30,000 above my 6-month cash target, and I'm $18,000 short of my 12-month cash target. So as a main buffer, which we can cover a little bit about, we're going to cover what is the allocation structure. Minimum, you need 3 months cash. So if your monthly expenses are 10 grand a month, you need at least $30,000 in cash at all times. That's your new zero. Okay. Just so we're clear. And so in terms of liquid net worth, this will tell, okay, we have 150,000 liquid net worth. And if we needed to liquidate that, right, this will tell us like, all right, we have a surplus. If we needed to sell some stock to pay our bills, if we had to, we could. And so this just shows us how far of a surplus or a deficit do we have to these 3, 6, and 12-month targets. Thumbs up if that makes sense. Okay. Months to zero. This tells us how many months we got if something happened and we couldn't do anything and we couldn't function. How many months until we're at zero? If our monthly expenses are 10 grand a month and we have $150,000 liquid, we have 15 months. So the goal is to have this number be bigger than the number of months you have left to live. All right. Now this shows us what our current snapshot looks like. So in the example, and this should extrapolate it out depending on whatever timeline you chose on the inputs page, it should show us that we have the breakdown of gross cash, business expenses, gross profit, how much in tax, how much net profit, and then our personal living expenses, and then how much left over. I put a yellow box around this net profit thing because based on how many hours you work on average per day and how much profit you make after tax, this is your real hourly rate. So that's important because when we want to, for those of you who are in Boardroom, you have the time audit tool, and that's basically where it'll tell us what to delegate based on our hourly rate. So if you're doing things, if you're making $38 an hour, yet you're doing $10 an hour tasks like cleaning your house or whatever. We need to delegate that out because it's losing you money every time you do a task that is lower than your hourly rate, and it's financially irresponsible. I highlighted that here for your viewing pleasure. And then we have current stats and averages. So on average of what are we spending per month, how many leads per month, booked per month, showed whatever your KPIs were. This will show you like what are your monthly averages for the last, your monthly, quarterly, yearly, weekly, daily, whatever averages are for whatever time period you put in there, extrapolated out over a year. And then this just shows if this person just keeps doing what they're doing basically and only having 12 grand left over every year, and they take that, they invest it at an average compound growth rate of 8%. We can see this whole timetable here of where we will be and by what age. And here's that timetable just graphed. You can hover over and see where will I be at a certain age if I just keep doing what I'm doing. And so you can drag these down as well. Let's say I wanted to stop contributing it to my investments at 54. Where would I be? Let's say I kept working and I kept having that surplus. I can drag that down. And also, let's just say I wanted to increase, which is a good rule, my annual contribution to my investments by 10% a year. First of all, at the existing, we'd have to increase basically everything by 10% a year. But if I did that, here's where I would be and by when. So you can play around with these numbers and it'll tell you where you will be based on whatever you plug in. When I do like my initiation calls with Boardroom guys, it's once we actually get them set up on Teddy and we get financial tracking set up and we actually do this process, it's usually a gut punch. And it really should be. But if you're fat, you know you're fat, you didn't want to step on the scale to find out what your actual body fat is, it's going to be fucking painful when you step on the scale. But you can only, if you're trying to go from 200 pounds and 28% body fat to 180 pounds and 7% body fat, there's a timeline, there's macros that need to be hit every single day, and there's totals and daily averages and workouts that need to be done and targets that need to be hit that are sub-targets on the way to that goal. And that's how it's literally math on how to lose weight. As long as the inputs you do are the right inputs, you should get the outputs. Most people just never know that for their life, which is fucking crazy. Okay, so now you guys have a tool to know this. Now let's go over to the freedom targets section. Ideal freedom number. This is our desired destination. And we've plugged in this example, desired freedom age of 70. And so I put my birthday in there. That gives 34 years. And all right, that's until 2059. Okay, awesome. That means I need, in this case, a yearly surplus of $441,000. That means that I need, based on the input section, it'll calculate what's your client LTV. So that means you need 60 clients a month at that existing LTV for the next 34 years. So bringing big numbers into realistic bite-sized chunks is fun. Okay. To do this responsibly at that income level, we need to build up bigger cash buffers because again, this is living on 50 grand a month. So 3 months cash is 150,000, 6 months, 300. 12 months, 600. So it just shows you what your new cash buffers need to be. Now, let's look at this. We need gross cash collected per year to do this, a little over $4 million. If we keep our exact same profit margin, that would be about $2.5 million in expenses per year. That would put our gross profit before tax at 1.4. That would mean that we'd owe $446,000 in tax, which means our take home is $1 million. At 50 grand a month in personal expenses, that means our personal expenses are $600,000 a year, and we have $441,000 left over. If you fuck with the savings rate numbers and stuff, these numbers will change, long story short. So that means we got to do per month, to use the per month language that everybody has been so familiar with. That means $339,000 a month, and that means that we're profiting $123 and we're taking home $86, living on $50, and we're investing $36,000 a month. Yeah, that means based on the KPIs that you've put in, here's the required actions to hit that. $66,000 a month on ads, if you, depending on what KPIs you used, 2,300 leads, 239 booked, 120 showed, 60 closed. And here's where it goes all the way back down to the day. What do we need to do today? You spend $2,100 a day for the next 34 years based on these numbers. Now, I'm not saying, to be very clear, I would be an idiot to expect all these numbers to hold for 34 years. The goal is to get a good starting point as a target, as an end destination, so you can start your route with good, solid, educated, turn-by-turn information. That doesn't mean it's not going to change. So you want to revisit this tool once a month. You take your actual, like what I have my clients do is they take their actual stats from Teddy, they'll plug in their their actual inputs from the last 6 months into here, and then we'll see what's the updated trajectory. Where are we now, right, as it relates to the targets? And you can keep fucking with this. But the idea is we're always just trying to have as educated a guess, so to speak, as possible. Whereas most people are just doing stuff, lots of it. But I know, and this is literally the exact math process that I went through that built all of my businesses, and my highest performing clients, all they've done is just religiously track their shit. And we know, and I can look at this too, and they'll be like, oh, I feel like this is going on, that's going on. It's like, how much did you spend on ads yesterday? $700. Cool. It says you need to spend $21.44. So you can bitch all you want, but let's make sure that our inputs equal the math of what the outputs are that we want. If they don't, nothing else matters. You guys see that? I'm not going to hit my goals for lack of hitting my daily inputs. This is so how many of you guys have setters or closers by show of hands? Okay, cool. Mario, Chris, cool. So do your setters, Mario, have KPIs that they have to hit each day? Cool. So this is the math that when you're managing a setter team or a sales team, you want to make sure that they have KPIs that they can control, like outbound messages, for example, right? And so if you put outbound messages as one of your KPIs in this calculator, it'll tell you if you guys aren't doing at least, let's just assume leads was outbound messages. If you didn't do at least 77 yesterday, you're not serious about hitting your fucking commission goals. It's as simple as that. And so if your numbers end up being ridiculous, like 777, then you just need multiple setters to hit the overall general targets. That's literally it. So inside of Teddy, there's this calculator that shows us, we plug in our cash goal for a particular month. It'll tell us what does our daily goal need to be, and then what did we actually do yesterday. And if what we did yesterday equaled or exceeded our daily goal of what it should be, then we're on track. This is literally all a morning meeting of a sales team huddle should be, is we look at for outbound, daily goal 199. Actual yesterday, this is demo data, 503. Great job, setter team. Daily goal of conversations needed, 19. Actual yesterday was 27. So here's this daily requirement. I just pulled it over basically from here's the targets that need to be hit. Then you just need to look, did we hit our dailies? Because if you hit the dailies, you hit the weeklies. If you hit the weeklies, you hit the monthlies. If you hit the monthlies, quarterlies, yearlies, and like fucking magic, you scale. What most people do is go, I'm going to do 1,000 DMs today, and then they only do 86. They feel bad about it, so they do 16 the next day, and then they do 12 the following day. And then they go off and investigate some other funnel strategy for a week and a half and wonder why the fuck they're stuck. Versus if you just hit your daily inputs based on the math, you'll be just fine. But you got to know. Does that make sense, you guys? Yeah. And so then we have a different trajectory based on these numbers as well that you can play around with. But this is that plan. So my promise on sales page was we're going to have plan. Here's exactly the targets that need to be hit based on what you say you want to do. Now, you might be intimidated and you have two options. Change your goals or fucking get to work. That's really it. Or I guess option 3 would be hope and that magic occurs. I'm not a fan of that strategy. And that's really it. You can either change your goals or change your actions. So most likely your actions, how many of you guys have realized your actions don't quite match what you say your goals are? Yeah, cool. Now you know. Now you have options. Change your goals or change your actions. Okay. Last but not least over here, I gave you a really kindergarten, I just want to make this much profit in this many days from now. So 100K profit in the next 30 days based on the numbers of your inputs. It'll tell you, as long as I do this for the next 30 days, every day, there's a high probability I'll hit my profit goal. But this is, to be clear, rich people think long-term, poor people think short-term. This is short-term thinking. So all of the per month people out there, it's short-term thinking, okay? Just so we're very much on the same page, all right? But I gave it to you because I know what I just shared with you can be, how many of you guys are a little intimidated by all the fucking numbers that we just went through? Yeah. So this is as simple as I can make it while still having you be on the court, okay? Without taking you out of the game. So this is about as simple as it can possibly get, all right? Most people have a huge ego hit because they've been thinking of themselves in a certain way, and I'll just say flexing, at least mentally flexing in a certain way, and it just ain't gonna get it done. We'll go through some of these rules. It's relatively quick, but the structure is what structure matters here, by the way. And as far as the inputs, I will just say a little bit of an anecdote on you may, and it depends. It's really challenging now that even though you know what you know now, depending on what your conversion rates, your ratios, your offer structure, your business structure, we all need an external perspective on what's the right lever to pull, even though the data might say more volume, for example. Sure. But is there a way that we might be able to shortcut some of that? As an example, the data might tell us you're undercharging. So I onboarded a client recently that was like charging like $3,500 a month. And like his numbers said he needed to do hilarious volume. And for example, he's a health fitness coach guy and like really broad market. And he has this segment of clients that are higher lifetime value than the 3,500. And I'm like, we could get fucking thousands of these 3,500 people, or we could package up a $13,000 offer and only sell it to, I'll just say niche down to this type of people. That would be a more efficient way for two reasons. And it's what I've done. It's why I've been able to cut my team down to nothing, is because I only work with people like you, is because when I look at actual numbers, it becomes very obvious, because I've just done this for so long. It becomes very obvious what the smart lever to pull is. And so once we have come to the conclusion of what lever that is to pull, your volume may get cut by 5 or 10, even 10 times of what's required because of a slight tweak in strategy, or a slight, I'll just say maybe it's a niche down or just a price raise or whatever. So just because your historical data might say to do something, a lot of times it's like there's a huge opportunity. One of my early mentors was like, what's the opportunity that you could fly a 747 through? It's really challenging to see that even when you have your own, I'll say GPS. And it's why there's boards of advisors that exist, is because just because you have the numbers doesn't mean don't need an external perspective, why there's boards of advisors. So I just say that because that's how we structure things. And it's why a lot of times, despite even having those numbers, you're intimidated, mainly perhaps because the efficiency level of your machine, the vehicle efficiency, you could get there if you just had you had a gas guzzling 1 mile per gallon fucking vehicle, and you figured out how to siphon constant thousands of gallons of fuel into it and eventually get there. Or there might be something that we can do to make that a 50 miles per gallon vehicle, so that the projections that you just looked at now become a little bit more palatable and less heavy feeling and intimidating. So just to be clear on that freedom number calculator, it's like you could absolutely, if you do those numbers, the math says you'll get there. Where, another perspective, or even you just looking at your own business in a different way and like, how can I make this even more efficient and effective? So like for me, my clients don't require fulfillment time. I have one-on-one availability, very few book calls, is because when you know the numbers and you have the data, you are only working on only the right shit and not working on anything else. And so what happens is they just go do the right shit, come back, we look at the numbers, and it's very quick. You can diagnose and solve problems very quickly. And so versus before, we had probably 80% of our client base was, I'll just say, needed a lot of hand holding. They were newer. They didn't have their shit together in any way, shape, or form. How many of you guys have clients that like need a lot of client success managers and hand holding and shit like that? That's operational drag. That's overhead that may or may not be required. So instead of thinking you need to scale what you have, that may be the best option. But what I did is I only market to the clients who don't require fulfillment. And I say that as a blanket statement. Of course, we still have Monday board meeting calls, but it's mainly review data. Here's what to do next. Cool. And we'll cover like how are we going to dig into this next bottleneck? We only focus on one bottleneck at a time, but I've eliminated the need for like support coaches and fucking availability and shit. So I don't have to pay anybody because of the market that I've just say niche down to. Does that make sense? So anyway, I just say that because there's lots of ways to do this. Don't think that just because your projections say what they say, that's the only way to get there. Okay, account structure. We're going to go bank account structure, income allocation structure, fuck else, how to pay for things. This is pretty straightforward. Does anybody still not have business and personal finances separated? Be honest. All right, thank God. So we have our merchant account, goes to our business checking. We also have a business checking that's a tax set aside account. We want to set aside manually every month the allocation for that tax account. Teddy automatically calculate that for you, by the way. Business credit cards only. By the way, business credit cards, if you don't know, they don't affect your personal credit score. Very wise to have a lot of them. Over the years I've stacked, I now have I have two of the cards I have on an unlimited spending limit, the Amex Gold and the Amex Platinum. On business, I don't have a spending limit. But if I added up the actual total spending limits I have between business and personal credit cards, I have about $600,000 in purchasing power. That's helpful. Business checking goes to personal checking. There's two ways that I'm not going to go into entity structure. I have an S Corp. I pay myself a wage as a W-2 employee. Taxes automatically get taken out of that. I also pay myself a distribution, which is just a transfer from one account to the next. And then I pay an actual quarterly tax bill on top of the taxes that are taken out of my W-2. So I think I pay myself $100,000 a year as a W-2. Every month, whatever, $2,500 goes to the IRS automatically. And then the rest is calculated, and Teddy calculates that all automatically. So I'm never hit with a surprise tax bill. And then of course, from your checking accounts, you go into your investment accounts. And ideally we automate that. I'll share with you what that kind of looks like in a second. Is that pretty straightforward? Everybody good on account structure? Okay. We just got to make sure it flows. Money likes to flow to organized places. So if your shit's disorganized, it'll not flow to you. Straight up. That's just how it is. Okay. Income allocation. Jim Rohn said it's not the amount that counts, it's the plan that counts. So we got to spend less than we earn. We got to invest the difference. We've covered that. Here's the general idea here. Again, modify it however you want. Base expenses, 50%. This is a starting point of the savings and investments, okay? Ideally, we put this at 50%. Education and improvement. I saw Ty Lopez made a video recently talking about how at least 10% a year goes to masterminds and shit like that. That's about what I'm at. I'm in numerous masterminds. It's a write-off. B, I learn shit that ends up making me money, or C, clients come from there. Either way, it lowers my tax bill, improves my knowledge, and improves my earning power. So I've spent well over $500,000 on coaches, consulting, mentorships, whatever, shit like that, because of not only the instant tax write-off, right, ROI, but obviously the information ROI. So it's like, if you owe in taxes, I'd rather just buy a fucking mastermind and wipe out my tax bill as much as I can, right? Cardone buys a jet, I buy a mastermind at different levels. That's the idea. And I'll just 10% for treats. Treat yourself. Just do it responsibly, which we'll talk about in a second. But this is just like a general rule of thumb. There's numerous sources on this, but this is just like a decent starting point. Most people are relatively light on the education improvement side of things, mainly because they view it as an expense, not an investment. And so I just know there's a direct correlation between growth and just constant self-education and shit. Like, I'm even still in stuff, to be clear, because I get questions that maybe one of you silently has this question of, oh, I'm already in a coaching program, I don't want to join another one. Everything that we're covering here makes all the other how-to programs work better, because the closing program or the setting program or the ops program, like all of that is useless without financial structure, without knowing what to focus on and when. And so most people just join shit because they feel like, or think, they're guessing. It feels like I need this, so I'll just join that. I want to finish this before I do that. I'm in like 5 masterminds right now. I don't attend all of the things, but I just stay and I keep paying because I have them in my back pocket for when, if and when I need them, and the connections that come from it. So it's a pay to play world. Good news is it's a write-off, and it always makes you more money unless you just don't do anything with anything at all. All right. So pay yourself first, automate it. We want to live on the rest. So basically you want to set up an automation from your business to your personal, from your personal to an investment account. And we want to increase our savings by 10% every 3 months. So you just go and adjust your automation. So if you start at $1,000 a month, from personal checking to a Fidelity account or an E-Trade or a Schwab account, that's an investment account, brokerage account, start at $1,000 a month, in 3 months, $1,100. And you just keep doing that. That would be that 10% annual contribution increase or whatever. It's actually going to be greater than that if you do 10% every 3 months. Then you target 50% of your income being invested every month. Cool, covered that. Income allocation. Never sacrifice liquidity when a viable alternative exists, i.e. other people's money. That's OPM, other people's money. I usually just put shit on a business card and get points for it. And if I need to, park it there while I reallocate some other shit if I have a cash flow situation of any kind. When you increase your lifestyle expenses, very important, immediately increase your savings transfers by the exact same amount. So back to the Audi R8. When I bought the R8, I put $45,000 down. I also put $45,000 in my investment account. The rule is if you can't buy it twice, don't buy it once. My monthly expenses increased by $1,500 because of that. So did my savings and investments. When I bought this watch, $26,000 watch, I put $26,000 in my investment account. So it was a $52,000 watch, and it was $284,000 car. But if you do that, now you can scale your lifestyle and your investments simultaneously. And that's how, if you you follow Saunders at all, his journey, he's done exactly that. And he's lived like a complete baller, traveling all over the place, and he's done it wisely and smartly. Most people just fucking blow it, so don't do that. And we want to aim for gradual lifestyle growth over time, not big leaps. As a rule, things die as fast as they grow. I will repeat that. Things die as fast as they grow. If you're growing really quickly, there's a high probability you'll die really quickly. Okay, investment structure. Highest return on your investment is always going to be in yourself and in your business, but we still want to have other shit growing on the side just in case our business does shit the bed. So here's the investment priorities. We want to start by yourself, your skills, your mindset. Then we want to get your fucking tracking systems, your shit together on that, because otherwise nothing else will matter. And this is going from lowest risk, most predictable return to highest risk, least predictable return. Then your marketing. If I spend money on ads and I have a historical 5x ROAS, theoretically, if I spend $1 on ads, I'll return 5. On what timeline? That's where Teddy also calculates your time to close. So for example, right now with my current offer and audience, my time to close from the time somebody enters my universe is 8 months. It just is what it is. So I predict my cash flow accordingly and my marketing accordingly. Now, if you're doing like sales, for example, you might liquidate much faster. But even so, on average in this industry, it's usually about 60 days lead to close. So just understand as you're projecting out your marketing, and we have a whole thing on projecting, I didn't include it in this, but you got to project out your marketing, including if I get leads today, that doesn't mean I'm going to liquidate them all today. That means probably 60 days from now, I should start to expect to gain some traction based on the activities I did today, based on my historical lead to close time. Does that make sense? Got to calculate that shit. Most people turn on ads, spend ads on a week. I got a few calls and this many leads and nobody bought. It's because the average fucking time to close in this industry is 60 days. Just cut too early. They didn't know their math. They didn't know their numbers. And so then they got all sad and depressed. And then they wondered why this random client came out of nowhere 60 days later. Because of what you did 60 days ago. So you got to know that. Then your team, then index funds, then speculation, risky investments. That would be stuff like fucking alt season's coming up, right? That's fine. There's just a particular allocation structure. So here's how this goes. From your personal checking, here's what I do, okay? Think-ish. 95% goes into a brokerage account. I have about half my money being professionally managed with a great fee structure because he's a family member and he manages like $1 billion and I get a family rate of like almost no fees and he does really well. So if you have connections like that, use them. Not everybody does, but I have half my shit managed by him. I have half my shit managed personally, but I still just my personal is I'm dollar cost averaging index funds and I might occasionally speculate a little bit on one particular stock, but I really don't do that much anymore. And I have been dollar cost averaging Bitcoin and Ethereum with auto buys for 7 years now every single week at it might be 10%. I don't know. It's about 5% of my profit is dollar cost averaged into Bitcoin and Ethereum with a 70-30 split Bitcoin to Ethereum. I'm not saying do. I'm saying that's what I do. And the Bitcoin and Ethereum one has paid off. So asset allocation is the key to growing wealth. You might have heard this as a reminder, not income. Yeah, you need income to fuel the assets, but let me tell you a story. Anybody ever hear of a guy named Richard Johnson, UPS driver, who fucking drove UPS for like his whole career, never made more than $14 an hour, and he retired after 40 years working at UPS just as a driver, and he spent less than he earned. He invested his difference and took his little baby Christmas bonuses in UPS stock. Put in the chat, if you know the answer, put it in the chat. But what do you think he retired with? How much money do you think he retired with? UPS driver, $14 an hour, just invested a little bit each month. Okay, 8 million is Ron's guess. 20, Shannon 20. Okay, 76. Compounding. Einstein called it the eighth wonder of the world. So that's why Warren Buffett here recommends buying the market monthly in an S&P 500 low-cost index fund. And I don't care how much shit that you see, people shit on that on the internet about how that's old, outdated, XYZ, whatever the excuses are. All I can say is that's what I do, because when you study the wealthiest people in history, they get rich slow and they stay rich forever. And that's what pretty much the fuck they do. And if they speculate and do risky type shit, they do it with 5% of their total liquidity. Where most people fuck up is they YOLO all of their liquidity into Dogecoin or AMC stock or shit like that. And then they lose it all. That wasn't a dumb move. I bought Dogecoin. I just bought it with a very small percentage of my liquidity because I followed these rules. So if I put 10 grand on Dogecoin and it goes to fucking 2, I don't give a shit because it's such a small percentage of my liquidity. See what I'm saying? That's what matters. These rules fucking matter. If you're not tracking and then you're not reallocating and balancing where your money's at, if you read any of Dalio's books, he talks about the all-weather fund. It's like you got to rebalance your shit, meaning if I'm overly weighted in crypto, I have a riskier
your portfolio. I'm either okay with that and I can't cry when my whole portfolio gets cut in half because I have 80% of it in fucking crypto, or I can sell some of it and put it in a safer, more predictable investment, whether it's a gold ETF or a bond ETF or a mutual fund. Again, this isn't advice. This is just like, if you study fucking the best in the world at growing wealth, this is what they do. So that's all I fucking do. And I'm not perfect at any of this, to be clear. Made me a multimillionaire. Risk mitigation, diversifying. If you buy an index fund, it already diversifies for you. Timing risk is you just dollar cost average. The rule is you buy your stocks, you buy your equities like you buy groceries every week. So I keep buying fucking every week. Asset class risk, we split it and we don't fucking overly heavily weight in Dogecoin or some fucking penny stocks. And as long as you do that, you're all right. So open a Schwab account, E-Trade account, brokerage account, dollar cost average, set up a bi-weekly or monthly auto buys of index funds, and then increase that investment amount by 10% every 90 days. Shannon did this like 4 fucking years ago. It's like one of the things that you implemented, set it and forget it. And Shannon is richer from a liquid net worth standpoint than people I know who have businesses that are 10 times his size. It's fucking nuts once you do the math on this stuff. And we just want the allocation to be a little uncomfortable. So it forces a little bit of it forces the savings to go basically into that account. So if you're making 10 grand a month, I wouldn't start at 8. But if 1,000 makes you feel like the butthole clench up a little bit, start with 1,000. If it's too uncomfortable, yeah, do it anyway. It's got to be at least 10%. Like anything less than 10%, you're just being stupid and reactive and dumb, and it's going to cost you money. And that's including, what if I go in the fucking use that to do more activity, more inputs in your business to generate more income? That's what you do with that uneasy energy. And then just hit your fucking targets. That's it. All right. We did it.